I'm Bonnie Wesorick, and I am a nurse. And I am a mother of 3 sons, and I have a wonderful husband named Dave, and I have thousands of colleagues across the continent that have devoted their life to healthcare.
Part of the criteria for the organizational hero, one of them popped out at me that for the essay that there were indications of inspiration and motivation within the organization stemming from a positive and supportive culture. How have you contributed to a positive and supportive culture?
Well, it's my life's work. I have been motivated by the reality of the environment in which healthcare providers across the world are working every day. I've been inspired by my colleagues. They're amazing. They come every day desiring to serve. They are passionate, they're compassionate, but they're faced with often many obstacles and issues within their cultures and environments. So, because of many different circumstances in the real world, I made a commitment one day that I guess I could say a decision, that I would really commit the rest of my career to do everything in my power to create cultures that are worthy of the commitment of those who serve, and worthy of the trust of the people in our communities who come to get care every day. That is my passion. That is the nature of the work I do. It's very hard work, but it is the most rewarding work I have ever done.
Can you tell me about your clinical practice model?
Yes, it is based on the goal was to transform healthcare. That's really the nature of the work we do. And when you look at what is existing in healthcare today, you can really see there's much work to be done. And so I wanted to be guided by some fundamental principles that spoke to the core of why we became healers in the first place. And so we studied. When I say we, it's always about we. There's a team that I work with, and looked at developing a framework to help us, to guide us in this transformation. One of the people that markedly influenced me was Max Dupre. Most people in our community know Max. Mm-hmm. And he said something to me that I was telling him about the vision I had to create, which is our mission, the best place to give and receive care. And he said, and it was sort of an unusual statement, you won't be successful unless you know reality. And I said to him, very spontaneously, Max, I think I know reality, and by the way, it is not a pretty picture. And he said, no, you need to really know reality. You only know the world you work in, what your role is. You need to know deeper. And the metaphor I use for that is the iceberg. The majority of us only know the tip of the iceberg in healthcare. And as a result of that statement, I have studied intensely the whole of healthcare, which, by the way, is very complex. There's a great deal of chaos. And so we created a framework for that change, for the work, to guide us when we get too focused over here and not enough focused over there. And within that, I said I would never stand in front of a group and give them theory without action. You know, you can talk about things, but you've got to act. And so within the clinical practice model, we design tools and resources to support the clinicians every day at the point of care. Now, when I use that term, point of care, I'm talking about the place where the hands of those who give and receive care meet. What do you need? What makes it better for you who are giving the care, and what is essential for those who we are privileged to serve? And as a result, the clinical practice model has been implemented in, well, close to 400 rural community university settings in this country alone.
Excellent. It was mentioned that your creative model of care is astounding to see the effects.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about the effects of care on the patient?
Well, we've had.
How that inspires you.
Oh, well, that's what keeps you going. When you know you're making a difference. And here is something that I learned. It took me a while to probably realize this. Unless we first cared for one another as healers, we would not be able to care for the people. And so it's really coming down to honoring them, honoring their story, knowing who they are, knowing what their goals are, and then having the expertise to be able to serve them to reach their ultimate health. And when you see people that have changed the quality of their life because of the service they rendered, it is very rewarding. It's all about the work to make a difference for them. And when we do that, we've made a difference in our own lives. So it's about both those who give and receive care. I have hundreds of stories. I have videos of patient stories that I take to other providers and say, and those who are giving the care, and show them the real situations that people are in. In fact, I didn't even realize this, but this necklace I have was from a person in a video that I bring across the country to show people the power of their work, the importance of their work. It's dedicated to them, but it's all a patient story.
Bonnie, what inspires you?
I have so many things that inspire me. I personally believe that healthcare is a calling. And it is just a phenomenal way to give back to humanity. And I am inspired every day by the people that I work with, the people that we serve. And so there are thousands of stories within each of those scenarios. I was just recently, the last 3 weeks, in a different place. And in every place that I went to, I met somebody from my past. And one was a student who it's been in the 60s when I was her instructor. And she talked about how her life was changed with a direction of knowing what it meant to be a healer. And every place I go, I run into people. And then I get the opportunity to meet so many patients, so many people who we give our care to, that share their stories of how, under the worst of circumstances, they were given hope.
How did you decide on nursing?
Well, in some ways it certainly isn't an impressive story. I was raised at a time, because it was 50, soon to be 53 years ago, that I went into nursing. And back then, the truth is, for women, it was very common to be a teacher, a nurse, or secretary. And I really actually thought I'd like to be a teacher, but I couldn't afford it. And I didn't have we didn't have the finances to be able to support that kind of education. However, my inspiration to make the decision came from my mother. She's the matriarch of a large family, and she has cared for the family. And I watched her, and I thought she's the best nurse I've ever seen. I watched her care for my cousin who was dying. I watched her care for my grandma, and I thought, I want to do that. And so I went into a diploma school of nursing, and that was the beginning of it all, and it was the best decision. To be honest with you, had there been a counselor probably in my life, they would have recommended me to be an engineer, I think, because of my math skills. I excelled in that, and thank God that didn't happen. So I'm really glad that I made the decision to serve this humanity as a nurse. It's a phenomenal profession.
Do you have a hero?
I have many heroes in my life. And when I think of heroes, I think of people who have great courage to do the right thing, even when they're afraid, you know. My first hero was my mom, but my ongoing lifelong hero is my husband, because I couldn't have done my work without him. And he knew the importance of it, and he supported me in every element of this work. We made decisions together that for me to leave, because I travel a lot, that he would always be there with the children. And so he really is one of my heroes, and my sons just follow in his footprints.
What about your staff at work?
Oh my
How
goodness.
would you describe your staff?
All you have to do is meet him once. It is, people actually comment about our staff all the time. They say, who are these people? They have great passion. They love their work. They work really hard. And when the beginning of this work, what is now the Elsevier CPM Resource Center, started with just a few who were able to sacrifice. They certainly didn't get paid a lot, and they worked day and night because they knew this was important work. And every one of them has committed to the mission to create the best places to give and receive care. They're phenomenal. And people say that everywhere I go. Just last week, I was in a hospital, and the person, we're having dinner, and the person said, I just want you to know, I just love Kate. She is phenomenal. And I said, yeah, I know, isn't it? It's just the truth. And they feel that way because we partner with them from the moment we meet them. We're their partner. And we're willing to walk with them through whatever happens to come their way, because believe me, this is hard work. And all of them will need encouragement.
Okay. I think we've got plenty to work with. Unless you have anything.
If you've hit everything that you wanted to hit,
I think we've got plenty to work with.
Okay, good.
Unless there's something that you personally would like to say, knowing that there are other health heroes in the audience. There are people who will work in healthcare. There are people who need healthcare. There will be people who will be looking at the winners on stage and be in awe of the stories. I just wonder if you have a message for people out there about either their passion or their their goals or their stick-to-itiveness, as far as maybe advice that you followed that helped you get where you are?
I don't think anything is accomplished by one person. It's always a team. There's no question in my mind at all. Students ask me often, how did you get into this work? Or, what do you recommend? And I said, you need to follow your heart. If there's any one thing that you've been drawn to, that speaks to your soul, that's what you follow. I had an interesting conversation on a plane one night. It was an hour into 4-hour flight. There was a young man sitting to my next to me, and he taps me on the shoulder like this, and he said, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" I said, "Oh no, go right ahead." He said, "Are you Bonnie?" I had my handouts. I always work on the plane, and it has my name on it. And I said, "Well, yes, I am." He said, "Is your work about creating healthy work cultures?" And I said, "Well, yes, it is." And he said, "Well, I couldn't help but notice you're a nurse." And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "So how is it that you gave up nursing to do this work?" And I must have had a terrible look on my face. And I said, "Oh, I haven't given up nursing. I'm doing some of the highest level nursing in my lifetime. It's just that before I cared for the patients, and now I've committed my life to those who give the care." And he said, "Well, how did you get into this work about healthy cultures?" And I spontaneously said to him, "It's a long story." And he said, "Start from the beginning." So I didn't know why at that moment, but I knew he was interested. And I said, and then when he said start from the beginning, I said, "Well, it's the hardest work I've ever done." And then he looked at me and said, "Then what gave you the courage to do it?" And I knew at that moment, he was a greater gift to me than I was to him. And I said, no one has ever asked me that question. And I'd like to honor it. And I just need to be quiet for a moment and think about the answer. He said, "Take your time." And so I said to him, "You know what? I'm ready." And he said, "Oh, that's good." And I said, "When you said courage, I thought about people. And I thought about the people I worked with every day. And there were so many of them. But I'm going to share with you 3 that I think markedly influenced me. And the very first was a colleague I worked with, I loved to work with. And she came up to me one day and she said, "Bonnie, I want you to be the first to know." And I said, "Well, know what?" She said, "I'm leaving." And I said, I was just sick about this. And I said, "Well, where are you going?" And she mentioned she was going into home care. And I said, "Why are you leaving?" And her words are imprinted on my heart. She said, "I need to leave before I lose my soul." Well, I never really did anything about that, but it was the first time in my life I started to realize some of my own environmental factors. The second scenario I shared with him was a colleague who I love dearly. I walked into the unit. I can tell you where I was standing. At that moment. And the manager said, "Have you heard?" And I said, "No, heard what?" She said, "Last night, Tom took his life." He was my closest colleague. My first reaction was, I couldn't breathe, and then I thought, I can't move. But you know what? The question I asked myself was, I wonder what role I played in his death. Now, here's what I know. We'll never know why he took his life. But I was privileged to have walked on this journey with him. He had the 2 characteristics of a healer. He was passionate and he was compassionate. He was the kind of colleague you long to walk with in your work. And I decided that I had to stop and think about, what is it that I learned from him? And this is what I learned from Tom. If we are going to be the healers we long to be, we have to first take care of one another so we can serve the people that we're privileged to care for. And the third scenario was a student who was one of the best I'd ever worked with. And this evening, the manager said, we need to talk. And I knew it was going to be about a student. That wasn't a good sign, but certainly not her. And she said to me, you have a student who'll never make it in the real world. And I said, what are you talking about? Because no one fit that criteria. She said, she is so unorganized. She's the last person to get off this unit every night. She can't make it in the real world. And I became defensive and I said, that is not true. She has never once been the last person to leave this unit. I am. Anything you've got to say to her, you say to me first. And in the conversation that we had, she said to me, I'll never work in acute care. It's not a good place to work, and it's not a good place for the patients. I said, tell me what you mean. And what she did, she gave me clinical scenario after clinical scenario after clinical scenario. And they were so real, and none of them good. I remember thinking at one point, I hope she didn't see me do that. And I said to her, I'd like to challenge you. You're right, we need to do something about this. And stay and help. We can change this culture. And she believed me, but she only lasted 9 months. And I went to hang up my coat one night and she's waiting for me, and this is what she said. I want you to be the first to know I'm leaving. And I said, why? And literally, she yelled out loud at me. Somebody was walking in the room. They backed right out. And this is what she said. Look at me. Look at me. I am young and I feel old. You told me we could change this place, and I have never worked so hard in my life. There's too much red tape. There's too much bureaucracy. There's too much, this is how we do it here. And I got to leave before I stop caring. And what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I actually thought I was. She knew what I was doing. And she said, don't you understand that's not the problem? I said, well, no, what is the problem? She said, you are. Listen to her words. You live a lie. I said, what do you mean by that? She said, you taught me the beauty and essence of care and sent me to a world where no one can live like that. What are you going to do about it? So I said to the young man on the plane, I made a decision that I was going to commit my career, the rest of my career, to create a culture worthy of that kind of commitment she had, worthy of the trust of the people. And he looked at me and he said, there's something you need to know. And I thought those were interesting words. And he said, I'm 39 years old. I am a very successful businessman. I am a multi-millionaire. I am one of 6 executives of a worldwide Fortune 500 company. And I was the 5th man on our executive team to have a heart attack. I had mine at age 38. I know the stress of the work culture. I know what caused my heart attack. And he said, keep up this important work you are doing. And I said, you can count on it.